All right, we are live. This is Cincy Jungle's Bengals pregame. I am Matt Minnick. With me, as always, John Sheeran and Anthony Cosenza will be joining us soon. John, how are you doing today?
I'm good. It's a crappy day in Cincy, so I'm glad that the game is in Indianapolis, where apparently it's got better weather. And yeah,
Roof's open in
it,
Indy.
it,
Must be better in
it,
Indy.
yeah, it's the time for rebound, I guess. That's been the story of the week. How did the Bengals respond from a terrible outing against Baltimore, and they're going up against their closest proximity geographical rival, so it should be a good game.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so some interesting parallels here and some interesting matchups. I think the Colts haven't been that great offensively. They want to run the ball. They haven't even been that good running the ball, even with what we think is a pretty talented offensive line. They got an old quarterback that can't move. A little bit limited in their receiving threats. I mean, really only they got a really good receiving tight end, and then they got Ty, but nothing nothing super dynamic there. But then they get that defense, and I think a lot of people talk about what happened with Baltimore last week, and oh no, here it goes again. They got another great defense, but I mean, this is a completely different defense in Indianapolis.
Right.
I can catch those around me right now. It's madness this morning. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, you have a good point about Phillip Rivers, who is the last 2 weeks. I think he's PFF's lowest graded quarterback after a not so good performance against Cleveland and a pretty pedestrian one before that. But it's a good point. The last 3 games Bengals have faced Carson Wentz, Gardner Minshew, Lamar Jackson. All 3 guys are really good at evading sacks and getting out of pressure situations. That's not Phillip Rivers. So if there was a time for the Bengals pass rush to actually step up and equate to the performances that their secondary has been giving, this is the time. Even if that offensive line, like you mentioned, is a very talented one that's getting Anthony Costanzo back, there's going to be a couple of times where the Bengals pass rush is going to get home. But unlike last few weeks where they've had just missed chances at sacks that have only been just hurries, this is the time to actually get those impact plays and force, third and second and long situations for that Colts offense.
Yeah, and I think you can get coverage sacks this week too, because they have been pretty strong in coverage, but like you let them out of the pocket and they can throw something. You let them out of the pocket and they can run like Carson Wentz did at the end of that game. That's definitely trouble. The Bengals haven't been getting home on the pass rush. They, like you see, the pocket starts to collapse and then it's over and they can't get off blocks. And yeah, they've struggled with those quarterbacks that are mobile that can run around a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see with Rivers, who is different. So we're brought to you by Narragansett, by the way. Narragansett's got the Oktoberfest beer out, the Marathon. So make sure you're checking that out. I'll be cracking that bad boy in a little bit here. But yeah, and there was actually my guest on this week's podcast talked about Rivers and his lack of mobility, and it's also equated since the beginning of 2019. If he holds the ball for longer than 2.5 seconds, they are in trouble. His completion percentage drops by like 14. His QBR drops by about 20. He's thrown 16 picks since the beginning of 2019, where he held the ball longer than 2.5 seconds out of 25 total. So it might kind of benefit that they get pressure, but they don't get there right away to force some bad decisions, force some opportunities for Logan Wilson, who we knew was very opportunistic in college, and he's proving to be that way in the NFL. And of course, for Jesse Bates, who's having an incredible season, and as a Bengal and as a guy who's playing for a team that's not looking like a playoff contender to Pro Bowl voters, not getting a ton of interest in that way. He's got to get some sacks to get that Pro Bowl all status recognition that he deserves, because people just aren't going to vote for Bengals because they're not winning games. So right. It'd be interesting to see. I think Phillip Rivers could create some opportunities for this defense.
Mm-hmm. And like looking at like his numbers with Pro Football Focus, he has a passer rating of less than 70 when he's holding the ball for more than 2.5 seconds. He's taken most of his sacks, and he's thrown 4 interceptions this season on plays like that. When you watch Phillip Rivers, it's like if you're the Bengals defense, you want opposing quarterbacks to attack the boundaries of this defense where the strength is, where William Jackson, Darius Phillips, and you have Jesse Bates over the top kind of patrolling those guys as a single high safety. You want guys attacking those areas and not over the middle, but that's what Phillip Rivers has always been. He hasn't a guy that stretches on like these far hashes throws. And you look at it this year, like the majority of his throws are just between the numbers between 0 and 20 yards, and that's where like he's going to attack this defense today. So the Bengals defense has an opportunity to kind of build off of last week where they minimized Lamar Jackson to a point, and now they're going up against a lesser quarterback with lesser talent who has almost the same kind of mentality when throwing the ball. So, but going back to the Colts defense, Matt, I wanted to ask you this question: like, what have you noticed when studying this defense? Because I mean, they're by the numbers, they're legit. They're like the best defense from a DVOA perspective from football outsiders, but they've also not played exactly the best offenses outside of the Browns from last week. What have you noticed about this defense, and how do they kind of overcome not talent deficiencies, but the fact that they don't really have a couple of above average players aside from like DeForest Buckner and Darius Leonard, who will not be playing today?
I think they know their scheme inside and out, and they're really disciplined in it. Like this team just executes. It's the total opposite of the Ravens, which the Ravens sent a bunch of different stuff at the Bengals, and I think that's why we saw Joe Burrow look like a rookie quarterback for the first time in his rookie season, was because he didn't know where those blitzes were coming from. Logan Wilson had a pick for the Bengals where it was a simulated pass rush, and he dropped off and he got underneath the slant. Lamar was looking for that quick throwaway, and I think that's a good thing about Burrow is he didn't fall into that trap, at least, because the Ravens were doing that like crazy, and not, it wasn't one guy. They have 7 guys in the line, and 3 guys would just drop off like like we're gonna steal a slant round on a simulated blitz or something. Like they were like dedicated to that, and he didn't fall into that trap. I mean, the AJ pick was bad. Don't get me wrong. It was a little bit different, kind of how that went down. So yeah, I think overall, I mean, this defense is really talented. They fly around the field. It's a lot of match concepts where it is a zone the majority of the time, but they get on those players in their zones very quickly. Even like they're known as kind of a cover 2 team, but they're not playing a stout sit in the flat cover 2. They are moving with vertical routes. So I think there's some opportunities in the flats, if they want to do like the check release with the tight end, things like that. I don't really want to see them boot, but like the bring the receiver across, put him in the flat, that type of stuff. I think there's going to be some opportunities in the flats to get the ball moving in that area. We did have a question here, so I'll kind of flip it around on you to this. What does Taylor need to do here? Whatever. What do we need to do from a play calling standpoint in order to move the ball on this Colts defense?
So the first month of the season, we noticed that the Bengals offense was more efficient, more productive when they operate out of empty sets, because we know that their pass protection is not going to hold up against most defensive lines out there. So might as well put Burrow in a position to get the ball out quickly, get some easy yards when you're spreading the defense out. We saw that fail miserably against the Ravens defense because, like you said, they were showing blitz with 6 or 7 guys. They were only rushing 3 or 4. There was confusion on the post snap, and you had Burrow looking like you said, the rookie quarterback for the first time. I think, like you said, there's going to be an easy opportunity to do that in this game because you're not seeing as many zone blitzes as you are against the Ravens. But at the same time, when you're in those when you're in those those second and third and long situations, and you're having Burrow either using play action or having him to wait like 2.5 seconds for a route to develop down the field, that can put yourself in compromising situations. And that's why, for the most part, last week, we saw the offense just fall on his face for 60 minutes straight. There's got to be smarter implementation on these empty looks and these long developing plays when you have an offensive line that you can't consistently rely upon for the entire game. So everyone talks about, they need to use more screens, they need to alleviate the pass rush. But even those situations, we haven't seen them utilized in any sense of competency. Like every week, it has to be assumed that unless there's a clear talent deficiency up front. They're not going to be able to run the ball consistently. I don't know if the Colts present an opportunity to necessarily do that and have a game like the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just think they need to be smarter with what they use, and they need to make sure that Burrow gets the ball out of his hands quickly and to not put themselves in these third and second and long situations where they've shown that they're not consistent in terms of converting them.
Yeah, and we've seen I'm blanking on the name. I think you retweeted it too, but I mean there was a piece recently on the Bengals in these empty situations when they're doing it in obvious passing situations and the negative impact it's having on them. But yeah, so we know that that's what they have to do to succeed, but at the same time we can't get behind the eight ball. So it's like they've got to be efficient on every snap to stay out of those third and long, the second and extra longs, those obvious passing situations, because empty has the advantage. You can only send so many people, but when you're running empty in those obvious passing situations, they will be able to tee off on you. So yeah, it's a bit of a balance, and that's if you remember, but that article and that somebody from The Athletic, it was like, okay, well, that kind of put me in check about it a little bit too. It's like, okay, this is a good thing, but we need to be smart about it and think about what the situation is.
Yeah, exactly. And one guy that can potentially help out with some of these issues is John Ross, who's going to be active for the first time since week 2, and we saw him in week 2 it was just really disappointing. There were a couple times where he just wasn't looking back to the ball. I think there was a target that went right past his face. There was just a lot of, you could feel the frustration from not only the coaching staff, but the fan base on like, why is this not coming together for Ross? And as a result, he has been inactive for the last 3 weeks. But since Auden Tate is dealing with a shoulder injury, you're having Ross back, at least dressing for this game. I don't know how much we're going to see of him. I think we can assume that he's probably last on the depth chart right now. They probably have more trust in not only Mike Thomas, but also probably Alex Erickson in some of the situations. But if you're a Bengals offense that just doesn't have any lick of speed at the receiving position, and you need to open it up against the defense like that is so stout with their scheme and just the unison of how they played together, I wonder how many times we see John Ross on the field and also have the ball thrown his way.
Yeah, it's not like even Auden Tate's getting a ton of looks out there. It's not like he's getting a ton of targets. So Tate's inactive. Ross gets the bump up. I think I just tweeted this right before we went on the air, but Ross is actually pretty good in the red zone, and nobody ever thinks about it because he's short. He's one of the shorter receivers they have. Everybody loves to talk about Tate as a red zone target and Ross as a deep threat, but I don't know. Maybe we see Ross have 2 catches and 2 touchdowns today.
It's almost flipped with those two because there's more success on vertical routes with Tate than there is with Ross.
Yeah, I mean that kind of makes sense with we haven't seen much success at all this year with vertical routes, but it would make sense with Burrow too because of just the way he is. The way he likes to kind of put some of those balls up there that you can get a Tate to go up and make plays on those balls. 30 yards downfield, and Ross is more about winning, winning at the beginning and running away from guys. So it'll be interesting to see. We do have a guest coming up here in a little bit. We'll be joined by the Bangalorian. First, let's take a look back at last week. There were some positives, so we'll take a quick look at a couple of those.
And now for the Narragansett High Neighbor Hit of the Game. Brought to you by Narragansett. The Bengals defense had an impressive showing against Baltimore, but the lack of DJ Reader will certainly hurt for the rest of the season. Fortunately, Christian Covington has really stepped up. Look here as he dismisses his block and comes down with a tackle. This was a great play by Christian Covington, and it's this week's Narragansett High Neighbor Hit of the Game. And now for the Narragansett Fresh Catch of the Game. The Bengals didn't have much going on offense last week, so this week's Fresh Catch goes to Logan Wilson. The rookie linebacker has been impressive so far this season. Here, he steps up and makes a play, stopping the Baltimore drive that had the potential to end in a score before halftime. Wilson shows blitz, but drops off underneath the hot route and comes down with the pick. This was an impressive play from Wilson, and is this week's Narragansett fresh catch of the game.
All right, as you can tell, I'm a little bit of a baby. When I'm mad at the offense or the defense, we were mad at the defense in the Cleveland game, and I gave the hit of the week to Jonah, and mad at the offense after last week, and given the fresh catch of the game to Logan Wilson. So I mean that hits on something. We talked about Logan Wilson a little bit already, but man, this defensive line, they've already been through so much. I mean, and it started with an opt-out, and it is just snowballed like crazy. With Daniels out, Gino's back. Hopefully he's full go now, because he's got to be. They went out and got Christian Covington, though, and I think Covington has looked pretty good over the last few weeks. What do you think about this? The state of this defensive line right now against a Colts team that's going to try to run the football.
Well, let's just think about this. Like right now, they have Gino at 3 technique. He's hopefully going to play a little bit more than he did against the Ravens. But Covington, Khalil McKenzie, and Xavier Williams, like none of those guys were on the roster at the beginning of August, right? Amani Bledsoe, who's essentially just a backup defensive end, who also gets looks inside, he wasn't on the roster until sometime in mid-August. Like half this defensive line was acquired through means of outside acquisitions because of either injuries or, like you said, the opt-out of Josh Tupou. With Covington, though, he was like the true replacement to Tupou, because you figured that he could play some snaps at like the 4-eye, but also just mainly at like a 2-eye type nose tackle type of player. And that's what he's going to be relied on for the rest of the season without DJ Reader. So a guy that they traded for, the guy they traded was going to be cut anyways in Austin Calitro, but a guy that clearly could have made most rosters in the NFL, and someone that obviously had immediate value when he was acquired by the Bengals, but now has immense value now. And to his credit, he's playing pretty well. He's not exactly the player that Tupou was last year, because that's just how impressive Tupou was last year, but he's done enough to warrant him continuing to be out there. But also, they really don't have a choice, because they're not going to start Xavier Williams in the first week that he's been here. And they like Khalil McKenzie to sign him from the practice squad, so he'll be on the team for the next 3 weeks, but I think they'd still like him more as a rotational piece. So it's up to Covington to, like you said, compensate for the lack of Reader, and Reader has really shown out in the last 2 weeks, and like the timing of that injury just hurt it even more, especially when you consider just like how much turnover on the defensive line is. So unfortunately for Atkins, who was supposed to be more rotated out as the season went on, that was before they lost literally 5 defensive tackles. So it's on him now to just kind of take on those extra snaps and be the player that he once was. And if not, then it's going to continue to be a weakness on this defense.
Yeah, I mean, defensive tackle has been really rough, and something to point out too. And if you're watching this show and you follow John and I close enough, you probably realize this. But look, Josh Tupou was a starter. When this team was running their 3-4 defense, which they ran about a quarter of the time, he was the third guy that was in there at defensive tackle. So like that was a big loss. Like that was a real big loss for this team. And I mean, they've tried. I mean, for everything we say about this team, they went out and they signed Mike Daniels. They went out and they traded for Christian Covington. Like, not big hallmark moves, but they're doing stuff, and they're finding suitable replacements. But yeah, I mean, just from Wren, and Atkins, into the season, like it's just been bad luck at that position, and now Hubbard. So
right.
It gets even worse. That it's like now you really want to save Gino for passing downs, because the only guy that even comes close to getting interior pass rush other than Gino is hurt. In Hubbard, I spent most of his time on the outside, but on third downs you kick him inside. And I mean, with Hubbard and Gino in there in a 4-3 defense in third and long, like you feel pretty decent about that. But now we're looking at probably a tired Gino is going to be in there, and you're not gonna have Hubbard. So we'll see what they do. I mean, I think not having Gino early, we saw a lot more of their dime packages were 3 down, and they leave the linebackers in there. So maybe we see some pass rush from Akeem Davis-Gaither, who looked good in his first start last week, from Logan Wilson. both those guys can bring it off the edge a little bit too. So,
right. And we have a commenter, Bryson Holloway. What about Lawson? He still gets pressure, and he does get pressure. He's been their most consistent presence on the edge this year. But even then, it just may not be enough against this offensive line specifically. Like, they're having to deal with this going up against one of the best interior trios of an offensive line that you'll see in the NFL in Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, and Ryan Glowinski at right guard. So, like, that's a talented trio that works really well in unison, and it could just be the difference in the game between the Bengals keeping this close and maybe the Colts pulling away. Because if Rivers has time back there to just kind of pick this defense apart, death by finger or paper cuts, if you will, like, that could just be the situation where they just maybe not get enough pressure up there if Geno's out there doing it all by himself and no one else gets off the block against a really talented offensive line. It could just be the Rivers just picking them apart on these underneath routes and just getting some yards after catch. Like you said, they don't have a lot of dynamic talent at receiver, especially with Mo Alley Cox, who has kind of emerged as a starter for the Colts at tight end. He's going to be out for this game. So it just may come down to that offensive line just being more talented and just being healthier than the Bengals defensive line right now.
I didn't realize Mo Alley Cox is out. That's great. I mean, they don't have a lot of good pass catchers really in this offense.
Right.
Mo Alley Cox is a big part, and you saw a lot of involvement really from the running backs too, from Jonathan Taylor. That's not really his thing, but they're getting in the ball a lot. He's got a lot of targets in that area. Naeem Hines. So we do have our guest. He is here, flown in from parts unknown, and that is the Bangalorian. Bangalorian, how you doing today?
Good. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we got you. You don't sound like you do on Disney Plus, but we can hear you.
Yeah, I got my voice modifiers malfunctioning, So.
Wait, where's the beer holder? How are you drinking that Bud Light?
Oh, we'll talk about that in person. We'll figure that out in person.
All right.
All right. So rough week last week. How you feeling about this Bengals team heading into Indy?
I feel great, man. I really, really do. You'll have to excuse me. I was partying with some stormtroopers on leave last night, so I'm running a little slow. But I really think we got a shot at this one. If you look at Indy's roster, everyone's scared of the defensive line, and everyone's scared of our offensive line and how they're going to handle it. And, the dice are going to roll how they're going to roll. But I think what we can do this week is get in there and pressure Phil. He's not going to escape the pocket. He's not mobile. He's older. So if we can pressure Phil, maybe bring him to his knees like I've been saying on Twitter all week, I think we can take this offense down.
We got an Anthony joining.
I think that's going to be a big part of it. When we see, look, everybody's upset about last week, and look, it's disappointing that we didn't do anything offensively, but that was a very good defensive performance, and obviously it was kind of a bit of a specialty game plan from them facing the Ravens. But man, if they can build on that success defensively in spite of all the injuries they've had, that would be huge for this team.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Hey, the injury bug's biting us right now a little bit, but like I just said, the dice are going to roll how they're going to roll, and it's going to fall how it's going to fall. I'm looking at this game as honestly a comeback game. Baltimore's a tough team. Who in this realm thought we were going to go in there and kick their butt, right? I don't think anyone did, right? That's one of the best teams in the NFL. They're going to be for a minute with Lamar back there and all the pieces they picked up. Patrick Queen taking that ball to the house. It just is what it is. But I think a team like the Colts, we can go in, compete, and come out on top. We've got all the weapons, We just got to figure out how to piece them all together and make them function.
All right, well, let's go ahead and ask the question. Like, how did this costume, how did this identity, this persona, this brand that you have kind of start? Was it before the takeoff of the show last year?
So I've been a season ticket holder for 10 plus years, gone to all the games, loved them forever. Last year was so rough, and everyone just such a negative attitude and aura around the team. And I kind of looked at guys on Twitter like Captain. You got Bengals Jim. A few others are starting to grow now. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to build something, and I'm going to scream my head off in a costume like a crazy person. And I'm a Star Wars fan, Mandalorians in particular. I've been a Boba Fett, a Jango Fett fan since before the show came out. The show was exciting, and it just kind of took its own life, man. I grabbed a guy that could 3D print, helped me 3D print this, painted it, striped it up. This is actually, I don't know if you can hear it. It's actually steel plates I cut and ended up using a little torch, firing them, shaping them, painting them up and everything. And I decided to just bring this character from the shadows and just be one of the crazy guys in the stands.
Well, I'm late,
right?
and I couldn't miss my shot to meet Bangalorian. So happy to have you on the show, man. I know we interact on Twitter a lot. How many hours would you say it took to create this costume? I mean, I feel like it would have the attention to detail is crazy. Can't hear me? Can you hear me?
You hear us, man?
I think we got you.
I'm not,
I was just
he's asking me something. I'm not.
No, I can hear both of you. Bangalorian, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Yep.
Okay, so Anthony was asking how much time it took you to put that costume together.
Oh, hours, man. Trial and error. This is not the first set. I had a set before that I just trashed and decided to go because with the metal, I tried plastic and the metal just ended up being more sturdy. And it all came together. Probably 100 hours, easy. I just with trial and error, putting it all together, painting it, shaping it, making things stick right. And then the first game there that I took it to, there were some kinks that needed worked out. Because after you throw little beers in the system and you're moving around and high-fiving and stuff, things tend to fall off. So,
did I see that you got your daughters involved too?
So Anthony was asking about getting your daughters involved. How'd that come about? And was it easier the second, third time around there?
Yeah, so they see me running around like a crazy person, like I said, in this costume, and they're into Disney princesses and all that. And my 6-year-old, my oldest, actually came up with the idea, hey, I want to be a Mandalorian, and I said, I guess what, I'm gonna make it one better. So that's why I kind of combined the princesses and the Mandalorians to give them that still that little girl feel, but kind of that kick butt bounty hunter vibe as well.
Are you in the process of? Are you in the process of convincing Baby Yoda to be a Bengals fan?
I'm trying. He's stubborn. Yeah. You've seen him on the show. He's very stubborn.
So are those their official Halloween costumes?
Yeah, they are. They're going to be rolling around my neighborhood as princess bounty hunters.
Nice. They're obviously Star Wars fans. Are they big Bengals fans too?
Yeah, they're huge. They might not fully understand it, but they cheer because I cheer.
So, we talked about the defense a little bit in Baltimore. Rough run for Burrow there. You're still showing love. You got the Burrow poster in the background. How we think about Burrow bouncing back this week?
He can have a big game any day he wants to. Baltimore's defense, they struggled a little bit, but that guy can flip a switch on whenever he wants to. If we can give him time, he's going to be electric back there, no matter who he's going against. I'm hoping T. Higgins has a big game today. I think he can have a breakout game. Tyler Boyd's always going to have a solid game. And then I haven't checked yet, so I don't know if John Ross is active. I've been busy this morning cooking and stuff for everybody coming to my house or my spaceship. But if Ross is active, I'm hoping he can just tear the top off of this defense and we can kind of spread the ball around.
Yeah. Were you there? And
John Ross is in.
Cool. There we go.
Were you there for the Jaguars game at Paul Brown?
I was, yeah. I was sitting right behind Bengals captain.
Oh, nice. I think we had him on right before that. Did you notice like a difference in how the players like were on the field and like how they've like interact, like not interacted, but reacted and kind of fed off like however many fans that were there?
I think that always helps. You know what I mean? If you're running out of the tunnel and there's no one there cheering and it's just speakers going off, I don't know. There's that mental part of this entire stadium is here cheering me on and it pumps you up. Kind of like when you're running or working out and you got your headphones in, kind of just the noise fuels you, you know? That's how I look at it anyway.
We had some last-minute fantasy football news going on here, so I had to step aside for a minute. So last-minute fantasy football decision. I've got a tough one, and you know, Bangalorian. Let me ask you this one. So, should I play Burrow this week? Because I just picked up Andy Dalton.
Ooh.
And I don't know. I mean, with that offense with the Cowboys, you know. He could be pretty productive there. What do you think?
Loyalist, so I say go Burrow, but I absolutely wish the Red Rifle all the luck in the world. And it's a shame the way he got in, but I'm so glad that man is starting at quarterback somewhere because he deserves it.
Yeah, I was going to save this jersey for when the Cowboys came to town, but now that he's starting for the Cowboys, there's no way I can do that. So yeah, I figured I'd show him some love for getting the start this week.
Yeah, what a wild week 12 or 13. I can't remember what it is. That's going to be Andy Dalton starting at quarterback for another team in Paul Brown Stadium. It's going to be so wild.
Yeah, and I mean the way that division is going too, like they're going to be in playoff contention at that point. They're going to be playing. The Cowboys are going to be playing probably for the division championship at that point. So they're going to come out swinging.
Yeah, he's got a shot. He's got a shot to go to the playoffs and potentially win a playoff game with a team. And I was an Andy Dalton supporter the entire time he was here, through thick and thin, man, to a point where I was getting harassed. So, you know, I hope that guy can take that team as far as he's able to take them.
Anthony wants to ask a question from the grave. He wants to ask what would realistic expectations, like a final record, be for you for the rest of the season?
For the rest of the season? Man, I had him at like 9-7 or something like that at the beginning of the season. I would love to see him just blow everyone out of the water, crush Twitter, steamroll every single hater that exists, and hit something like that. But I would love to see him at 500 this year, build off of this year, roll into next year with some offensive line free agents, some offensive line pickups from the draft. I won't get into the AJ talk unless you guys really want to, but potentially another receiver, and build off of this year into next year and hit the ground running next year. If we want to talk realistic, if we want to talk my super fandom, let's win them all, baby. Let's win them all.
I like it. Yeah. I mean, they've got some winnable games coming up here after the bye week. I mean, it's going to be real tough. You know, we're hoping they can pull off one or two here in the next few weeks. But I mean, it's a tough road through the week after the bye week when they have the Steelers. But after that, they're getting a little bit back into the NFC East, and they do have some opportunities. All right. So I asked you for 10 minutes. We should let you go and get ready for the game. But let's get a prediction from you first.
Man, I think we can win this. It's going to be close, but I think we'll be around 27-21. That's what I want to see at that Bengals victory.
27-21. I like it. Well, thank you for joining us, Bangalorian. Make sure everybody's checking him out on Twitter. Lots of great Bengals stuff. You know, all positive stuff, and I mean, really. Like we need that in this fan base, right? There's downs and too many downs. So definitely give him a follow on Twitter. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
All right. So look, we mentioned AJ Green, so we got to get into some of the drama from this week. AJ Green lip reading. What do we think of AJ's situation right now? Is he? I mean, is he turning into what he never has been? The drama-filled receiver that the give me the damn ball, Keyshawn Johnson, or is he frustrated with how the team's performing as he should be? Here on the Narragansett pregame show, what do we think is going on with AJ Green?
John, you want to go first, buddy?
Yeah, I guess you're putting me on there. Like, all right, everybody loved the fact that he wasn't the quote-unquote diva, the guy that put him first and all this stuff. At the end of the day, when you have now 5 consecutive losing seasons, you're in a contract year, you're uncertain of what's going to happen after this, and also you're just not playing very well, and you're in a scheme that you haven't played in a lot. That stuff builds up, and it would affect anybody, especially even somebody like Green, who approaches things quote unquote the right way and has always been on the side of fans. Now we're seeing a situation where there's just actual genuine frustration. That's not just happening at the end of the season, right? Like we saw in 2016. This has been building from the very beginning of this season because nothing has gone right for him since week 1 has happened. I think it's natural. I think it's fine if he's experiencing this types of things and he's going through these types of things. Like, I don't think it's entirely fair for us to expect him to treat it like it has been for his entire career when circumstances are changing. But at the same time, the Bengals are paying him a lot of money and he's not producing those results. So obviously that criticism is going to come. It just comes with the territory. So at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter if he would like to be traded, because I don't think the Bengals would get anything close to what they would want if they were to deal him out. It's just a matter of how is this relationship eventually going to end, because unless he produces like the player that they're accustomed to, it's just hard for me or anybody to see him return to the Bengals in 2021.
I mean, nobody's paying $18 million for the next few months of a guy that hasn't done anything in the last couple months. You know what I mean? Like, there's too much. Like, if he'd been going off, like maybe a playoff contender would swoop in there and do it, or somebody that thought they could sign him long term. But who's taking that risk right now?
Well,
nobody.
Yeah, and to John's point, and hopefully you guys can hear me. I don't know why Bangalorian couldn't hear me. That was a bummer, but hopefully you guys can hear me. But to John's point, I mean, we talked about it a little bit on our Wednesday show, but I mean, we've seen glimpses of Green kind of having these emotional explosions. You know, in 2016, he was frustrated. I think it was 2017 when he got in that fight with Jalen Ramsey. Remember that one? You know, I think also Green's having a tough time. Not only with father time catching up with him, but I think he's having a tough time not being the guy who's targeted a bunch like he was with Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton, when in doubt, always went Green's way. Joe Burrow's a guy that disperses the ball across the field to different targets, and that's one of the most effective facets of his play. So, you know, I mean, Green's getting looks, but he's probably not getting the 10, 12 targets a game that he's accustomed to, and I don't know that he's handling that well. And then couple that with age, maybe playing a little tentatively because of some injuries he's experienced recently, and you're kind of seeing the frustration boil over.
And again, you can understand it, and especially from a guy like AJ. Like, he's earned it. You know what I mean? Like, he can be pissed off. I'm cool with AJ being pissed off. And really, I'm cool with all these guys being pissed off. I think last year we talked, last year there was like so much talk about, well, yeah, but Zach Taylor hasn't lost the locker room. First of all, I think we throw that, like, it's kind of a cliche. I don't even, like, what does that even mean anymore? Like, lost the locker room. I mean, look, if for us to know that it's tough unless it's completely gone. We're not gonna know what's up. But look, when you're losing, guys should be upset. When you're losing, people shouldn't love Zach Taylor. You know, and it doesn't mean they can't, respect him and that it's over and he needs to go necessarily. But like, they shouldn't like their coaches when their coaches aren't putting them in position to win games and to make the most out of their talent. And that brings us to the late week drama with the Darius Phillips tweet about using your talent. Commented, he said especially mine. He retweeted himself, said especially mine. It's like making it clear that he was talking about himself. Sean Williams, said or mine. Jermaine Pratt gave it a 100 emoji. And like, the defense is coming off a great week. So, like, to me, if there was locker room issues after the Baltimore week, it would be coming from the offense. Like, the team that played really well. if they're getting frustrated, it wouldn't be directed at the defensive staff. It'd be directed at the offense or the offensive staff, or possibly Taylor himself. So, but like this morning there was a Paul Dehner tweet that it looks like Phillips is expected to start outside because Mackenzie Alexander's back. So I mean, I don't know. What are we making a mountain out of a molehill here?
I think you summarized it pretty well. Like at the end of the day, it's most of it is conjecture. It's just us putting together clues that we see because this stuff is quote unquote aired out to the public. And I think that's what bothers old heads in this situation that didn't grow up in the social media age. I think you make a lot of good points with this. Like Darius Phillips, Jermaine Pratt, these young guys, they were bred. They're about as old as I am. They were bred on social media. They know how to handle it, and they utilize it in different ways than guys who are getting into the game a little bit late and are now seeing it kind of interject with their careers as their careers progress. Like people get upset about because they read it, right? Because it's not being kept in closed doors, and therefore it creates a controversy because us, the gas bags, we talk about it because we're able to find out about it because it's made public. So all that is perceived and is connotated as a negative when in reality, like you said, it's just frustration, and it's justified and earned frustration because, again, lack of success. 5 consecutive losing seasons. The head coach who was hired in 2019 has 3 wins and 17 losses. So all of this makes sense. Like no one should be happy right now, even if the happiness would indicate a successful and continuing progressive building culture. Like bumps in the road are normal and they will happen, especially when the lack of success. At the end of the day, when the results get better, the moods get better. And that's ultimately what's going to bring this around.
Right. This wouldn't be a point of conversation if the Bengals are sitting here at 3-1-1 or 3-2 or 4-1 or something like that. My thing is, look, now this year alone, you've got AJ Green showing some frustration. Auden Tate earlier in the year, his agent came out and said basically if you're not going to use him, trade him. Carlos Dunlap voiced some frustration about how his situation was handled. I mean, so there are some examples that kind of keep growing, but also to John's point, some of these guys that are voicing actually all 3 of those guys that are voicing frustrations, those are Marvin Lewis holdovers. Those aren't quote unquote Zach's guys, right? So, I think maybe there's a little bit of some sour grapes, and for the cases of Dunlap and Green, like I said earlier, I think there may be an issue where they're not handling a decline in their play well. They don't want to admit that a decline in their play is inevitable and is occurring in front of our eyes. I love those guys and I love what they've brought to the team for years and years and years, but the decline is obvious at this point in time. So, I think there's just a combination of factors. And the biggest one, though, like John said, Zach Taylor only has 3 wins to stand on in terms of all of these guys being frustrated. If Zach Taylor had, a 6-win season last year and then they got off to a 3 or 4 win start here already, we wouldn't be really having this conversation. We'd be like, well, too bad, because the team's winning games without him. They're not winning games. And Zach Taylor now, the spotlight's on him as a young coach trying to handle all of these, I guess, egos, if you want to call them that, in the locker room.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at these guys, and Pratt. So Pratt's one of them. Pratt was involved, so Pratt isn't a holdover, but they're all guys that are competing. And I mean, and honestly, I don't know. Like we all love Phillips, but has Phillips done that much? Sean Williams is a guy that I found it funny on Twitter how people were coming in and like, oh yeah, we got to get rid of Taylor and like supporting it. And I'm like, wait a minute, you guys are the same guys who've been talking shit about Sean Williams and wanting to cut him. Like you really care what this guy's talking about when like you're talking that negatively about him. And I mean, I don't think either one of those things at this point, by the way. But Jermaine Pratt's a guy who's probably taking a little heat right now because he's realizing that Logan Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither are pretty good. And he might feel like they're starting to eat into his reps, and that he might be overtaken at some point. So, I mean, you can see the frustration, but you can see the frustration with these guys might not be about the team. It might be a little bit about themselves. So, I don't know. Well, I mean, we'll see how that goes. I think it was a little bit blown out of proportion. We never know like what all this stuff is, and I think that I'm older. Like Facebook came out when I was in college, and it was a big deal. It wasn't on my phone, you know. But I think I understand that like this is the culture now, and my wife and I a while back like we had like a problem at like, I don't want to say a name, but we had a problem at a restaurant, and like she sent an email to the customer service people about it, and like 2 days later didn't hear anything, and I tweeted, and like 20 minutes later I heard something, so like social media is the way you get attention for whatever you need right now, and it like I'm an old school guy myself, and I don't like it. And if I was coaching still, and guys were doing that, I'd be very frustrated, and very annoyed by it. But you kind of gotta like understand that's what it is now. Like you can't stop the hands of time.
At the end of the day, you have to evaluate what's causing the problems. Like the anger should not be addressed towards the players that are reacting to the actual problem. The anger should be addressed to what's causing the problem, and only when we realize that and we address that problem can actual progress be solved from this.
We got about 10 minutes till kickoff. I got a question here that I do want to address with both of you before we get into predictions. What are your thoughts on the Steelers-Browns game?
I think it's been 17 years since the Browns have beaten the Steelers, and if there's a time for them to make a statement, it's probably now, because they haven't been 4-1 since Bill Belichick was their coach. Even with how well the Browns are playing relative to how they used to be playing, it still feels like the Steelers are just the better team, and they're probably going to come out on top. I don't know if we can trust that Browns offense on a week-to-week basis, because at the end of the day, it's a lot about what Stefanski and that offense are designing for Baker Mayfield, but it's up to Baker to kind of elevate and show that he can just win despite some advantages that they have going into the game. That Steelers defense is still dominant as hell, and it's going to be a great matchup to watch against that Browns offensive line. And until the Browns, I think, prove that they can overcome this incredible speed bump or just obstacle that they have in their way, I think I would still have more confidence in the Steelers winning that game.
Yeah, this unfortunately kind of reminds me a little bit of when the Bengals kind of had their early renaissance under Marvin Lewis. I'm not saying Baker Mayfield's the next Carson Palmer or anything like that, but remember it was like, oh, all of a sudden this game is super relevant. The Bengals are really off to a hot start, and so are the Steelers. And now we're sitting here going, oh, now it's the Browns' turn, right? So I guess from that standpoint, I'm a little bit saddened by the state of things, but that's just kind of the NFL. It's cyclical. And I think we've seen a lot of competitive contests between these two teams in the past couple of years, especially there's the helmet deal, helmet gate or whatever last year, and all kinds of different things. But the Steelers are still the Steelers, and that organization is what it is. And I still expect them to handle business. I still expect them to, I don't doubt them until they give me a reason to doubt them. And they don't really often give you a reason to doubt them. So until the Browns prove otherwise and do it consistently, I still say the AFC North goes through Baltimore and Pittsburgh all the time.
The Steelers are so frustrating because like you hate them, but they just do everything right and they build it right. And I remember like growing up,
you envy them, right?
Yeah. And there's always and they always have a couple players where you're like, man, I hate this guy because he's a Steeler, but God, I love Kevin Green. God, I love Troy Polamalu. You can't really hate them. Some of the individual players like this, and growing up, like every couple of years, they'd struggle a little bit, and they'd be like, oh, maybe Bill Cowher's going to go, and then they'd be in the playoffs the next year. Like they figured it out. Like they know how to build it. And I think like you look back at last year, and like Roethlisberger gets hurt, and then they trade their first round pick for a safety, and people were losing their minds. Especially at Roethlisberger's age, they're like getting the Burrow Herbert sweepstakes. And they're like no, and they rolled out there with Mason and Duck and almost made the playoffs. If we had the current playoff formula last year, the Steelers would have been the 7th seed in the playoffs last year with with Duck. But they were really smart. Like they identified it, and Minka was the piece that defense was missing, because that defense was not great at the beginning of the year. And Devin Bush was still coming along too, but and like they figured it out, and they went against some conventional wisdom about getting a young, exciting quarterback, and now like Roethlisberger's back, and their defense is flipping incredible, and they're probably going to win the division, and it freaking sucks. Well, what are we going to do?
Tomlin's never had a losing season. Never had a losing season.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's extremely frustrating, but what are you going to do? So I'm a Bengals fan because I'm from Northern Ohio. I'm a Bengals fan because my dad wanted to have a rivalry with my older brother, who is a Browns fan, and he happened to get tickets to a game where they were playing the Bengals, and he went all in for how many years later? I mean, God forbid I could have been a Steelers fan. Would have been a much easier life, but something deep inside me would have hated myself.
Yeah.
I can tell. I know somewhere deep inside myself, I would have known that it was wrong. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I was going to do what you were doing. This is going on a very disturbing and also relative path to mine. So let's go ahead and close this out here.
All right, yeah. 4 minutes till kickoff. What do we got for predictions?
Oh man, Anthony, go first.
Predictions. I think that there's going to be a nice bounce back by Burrow this week. I think Burrow's going to have a nice game. I don't know if that means the offensive line is going to play exponentially better, but I don't expect Burrow to string together 4 games. I don't think that's in his DNA. That doesn't necessarily mean I think the Bengals will win. I think they can win. I think this is a winnable game. It's an away game, but kind of not really, because it's pretty close in proximity. So I think I had 33-31 when I did my game preview on Cincy Jungle in favor of the Colts.
Yeah, I think Zach Taylor has never won a single road game in his career. All 3 of his wins have been at home. This is his opportunity to get that kind of monkey off his chest. He's going up against an offense that's not playing particularly well, and he's got a quarterback that, like Anthony said, is capable of bouncing back from bad games. But he's going up against a defense that plays really sound. And how this offensive line responds, how these receivers respond to getting blown out of the water this week, it's going to be very indicative of who Zach Taylor is as a coach. So it would be great if they were to win and just make that statement. I don't think it's going to happen, though. I think the Colts are just going to do a little bit too much, and they just have the slightly better team. Not slightly, they have the better team, and they're going to play slightly better. So I don't think the Colts are going to cover that 7.5-point spread, but I think it's going to be kind of low scoring, maybe like a 23-17 Colts victory.
All right. I think Burrow bounces back. I'm not sure where they're going to be able to run the ball, and we've seen how that can lead to struggles for them. But I think the defense is going to step up. I like to see the defense ride this momentum. I don't know if we're going to fix the red zone issues, but I think they do a little better in the red zone. I think they score off of a turnover on a pick from Jesse Bates, and I think the defense scores points with Darius Phillips returning an interception for a touchdown. And I think that's the decisive factor. I'm going with 23-16 Bengals with a defensive score being the deciding factor in the game. And we're 2 minutes from kickoff. And let's go, baby. Who day? We got Anthony. You're coming on live after?
I am, yes, for the post-game show. Yep.
All right, so make sure you are joining Anthony after the game, and we'll see you right back there. Thanks for coming on today. This is the Bengals pregame show brought to you by Narragansett.
See you guys.